discuss a sensitive subject we all need to talk and think about. Here now is Jennifer Graziano and Time to Talk.
Good morning, Westchester. It's 9 a.m. on Monday, and that means it's time to talk with me, Jen Graziano. I'm a licensed funeral director who oversees my family's funeral homes, Cox and Graziano of both Mamaroneck and Greenwich, and the Zion Memorial Chapel of Westchester. Every Monday, I come to you discussing important topics and sensitive matters that all of us need to pause and reflect upon at some point. And through this show, I hope to provide a platform to do so. If you're joining us on air this morning on 1460 WBOX, a Whitney Global Media Station, we will take your questions, comments, and calls to 914-636-0110. Good morning to everyone in the control room. And good morning, Facebook Live viewers. Great to be back with you. There's snow on the ground today, so that's an eye-opening December reality for a Monday. We hope you're safe traveling and walking out there. Good morning to Tim behind the camera. So I am joined today by phone by a frequently recurring guest in the show, although it's been a while since we've spoken, but Carla Blaha, an author and evidentiary medium who's come on this show to share so much wisdom with us. I'm delighted to have you back. Good morning, Carla.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. I always say when you come on, this is a show that we're either going to have people like eager to listen or people who are going to tune us out. But I guess you're very used to walking that fine line in your line of work. You have your believers and your non-believers for sure.
Absolutely.
But
at
what
this
I think
stage of my life, it doesn't really concern me. You believe or you don't believe. We hope you do. If not, that's okay too.
that's very true. I'm at a similar stage as well, my friend. But I think what's always amazing about you is the scientific aspect that you bring in. You're an evidentiary medium, which I want you to explain again to our listeners and viewers. There's more to this than meets the eye, and I want you to explain that. So let's begin. What is an evidentiary medium? You're not just a psychic. There's really substantially supported scientific backed evidence to what you do. So explain that to us.
Yes, I believe there is. And as you know, I was raised in a family. My father was a scientist, so I wasn't raised where we were meditating or doing mantras every day. Everything was fairly literal and had to be proven. Yet at no point growing up did my father not believe in an afterlife or experiences that my mother had and or intuitive she had seen. So it was very easy early on for me to start putting two and two together from how science matched or could match, and I'm certainly no scientist at all. In fact, I went completely, obviously, the other way. But we are made up of energy and quantum physics, and I study it the best I can with my limited non-science brain. That everything is energy, from the table next to us, obviously the earth and crystals, they all have a different frequency, energy, and vibration. And energy, by simply the law of conservation, which I didn't make up, it's an actual science term, states that energy can't be destroyed, killed. It can't. It only can be manipulated by an outside source, so you can move energy. So on that premise alone, once the human body passes and or our animals, where would that energy go? Now, maybe we don't exactly know, but it can't be destroyed.
So
there's a question.
When you're receiving messages or when people are coming to you to channel loved ones, it is in fact that energy is what you're receiving and enabling you to communicate on their behalf.
This is my feeling. It's a much higher vibrating energy, and in training in years of doing this is how I feel it's done. On the most basic, elementary explanation, mind you, and from, as you brought up, I'm an evidential medium, which means that the spirit person can't just say to me, and you've seen me work, oh, hi, I miss you, I know you're sad. I mean, that's ridiculous. That proves absolutely nothing to me or to my clients. So I ask that the energy and spirit give me information, I always say, that cannot be guessed, Googled, or surmised. Information I couldn't know that is so specific to the person, from body scars to expressions to foods they like, they didn't like, funny stories. That's where the evidence comes in. So you're like, okay, I've got something. some energies lived on that's giving me this information because you can't make it up.
And you
So
always
that's
say
how I
3
base
to
my
5
work.
pieces. Am I correct, Carla?
I used to do more than that. Yes, I now do, well, it's actually more than that, but I ask for initially from the spirit people 3 to 5 pieces of evidence. And they may not come in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We may have to find them, or they might have to write them down and check with family or friends. And then I will then give some messages. I used to do up to 10 pieces of evidence, and I wasn't getting any messages. And then my poor clients were feeling a little sad because they were like, oh, wow, that's amazing. You knew that he had 3 stitches on his left pinky toe when he was 10, but is there anything else? So
Right.
I try to make more of a combination now, but they're certainly not going to tell you who to marry, how the pyramids were built, or anything of that nature, or at least I've not been told that.
Oh, believe me, I wish they would.
Yeah.
But so in full disclosure, I've had several readings with you over the years, and I've always been impressed, folks. I mean, she hones in with great specificity, and she has said things that she could not have known, things that didn't, they at the time they weren't readily apparent. I couldn't connect that dot, but in days, weeks later, they made more sense. One of the things I love about you too, Carla, is you're not, you're not reading your audience in the sense that you're real. You're not going to say something that you're not getting, a message that you're not receiving. And even if people are doubting, you're not altering your message. You're sticking to your story and to what information and what energy you're getting. So that validates you as well. I've seen your community growing by leaps and bounds from when we first met. You're out there and you're getting your message out there. It's well received. You have over 4,000 followers on Instagram, I think. What is responsible for this growth in your opinion? Are you doing more? Are you making yourself more of a visible presence? What do we attribute this to?
I honestly think it's the way times have changed as far as people being more on media, because I've put myself out there. I have a platform medium, so I speak in front of crowds, which changed during the pandemic. So I had to move to different platforms. So say on TikTok, I have 73,000 followers, and I read people all over the world now. I feel that it's part of the new media that's happened, and people know that it's readily available, and they participate. It's actually been amazing.
And we're joined by some Facebook Live viewers this morning. So anybody who is listening or watching there, we'll take any questions or comments for Carla as well. Do you find, though, that the noise of social media impacts your ability at all to receive this energy, to focus and to hone in on this intuition? Is it just kind of like a lot of white noise in a noisy space, the many platforms available?
When I'm doing something live, do you mean?
Yes. I mean, when you're doing something live and you're able to access a much more vast audience than you would, let's say, in a workshop.
It's an interesting question. I tend to thrive and always have in front of a crowd, whether it be on my phone, on TikTok, in front of the world, or whether it's in person. So I would say that for me has not necessarily been a problem. I did an event the other night, which was very small, a private event, and very small. And I struggled a bit because even with a few people, they had so many people that came in, I had to actually really hone in and focus. And I actually attributed the more static, oddly enough, in my work for some reason to the less people that were in front of me.
That's
so,
interesting.
For me, I don't know what it is, but I tend to either like 1 or 2 people or a lot of people.
So, Carla, to do your work, I mean, you have to really be connected to yourself. Your mind and body has to have a very strong connection. Your intuition is very strong. Do you find, though, that just going through everyday life and navigating through your tasks, that no matter where you are, you're in receipt of messages or your intuition is speaking to you, you're sensing something? Are you able to turn this off, or do you go through life with this heightened awareness always receiving that which is around you?
I am unable to turn off intuitive information, which is not connecting to those in spirit. Regular intuitive information, I cannot. And that is difficult for me because whether I'm in a physician's office or a business, I tend to I don't know everything, and I can certainly get a shade of gray wrong, but I tend to know this is going to be a good experience, this is not. My intuition is so sharp. That can be bothersome, but from a spirit person's standpoint, I can pretty much... You have a caller? And I am not bothered 24/7 at all.
Carla, we have a caller on the line. Good morning. Hello?
Hello?
Hi. Good morning. You're on the air. We have a caller on the line?
Hi, yes. My name's Janine, and I had a question about, we use the word intuition, and I have heard the saying that every medium is a psychic, but not every psychic is a medium. But my question would be, does every person have some form of psychic ability? We use the word intuition, and I feel like everyone has that, and so I was just curious as to, what your thoughts were on that.
That's a great question, Janine. I was about to ask the same. So, Carla, can you share some insight on that?
Sure. In my opinion, undoubtedly, every human being is born with a natural sixth sense. Every single person. I liken it always to singing. Some of us are better at it than others. Some of us can be trained to different degrees, but we all have it. And whether we use it for a living or much like singing, we should keep it in the shower or the car, we should be using it. And you're absolutely accurate. In my opinion, and it's opinion across the board, every medium is a psychic. Psychics are not necessarily mediums. Where a psychic or an intuitive can get a spirit person's name or something about them, but from my experience, that would be more of a psychic hit than actually connecting to spirit, and that's where the evidential mediumship comes in. It's a bit of a different avenue than just getting someone's name. So you're absolutely right.
Is there any way, can I just ask one more question? Is there any
Yes.
way what is the best way to develop that if we all have something, if people are interested in that?
I always say practice, practice, practice. I wrote a book called Get Your Vibe Back, and I had started a mediumship book, stopped it, and wrote that book because I think psychic ability, intuition is the foundation for everything else. So you can simply practice by taking a page of a magazine and putting it in an envelope and not looking at the magazine, putting it in the envelope, think about it, and write down everything that comes into your mind and then compare it to what was in the envelope. It's not always literal, so it may be a picture of something, but if you wrote down red and the whole picture happens to be red, but it's not what you were thinking in your head, but the color's right, you've got something right.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janine. Great questions. And you know what, Carla? I think it shows that this is all inside of us. So it's something that, as Janine mentioned, as you're saying, Carla, it unites us all. We all have this, but it's how much do you want to develop it? How far do you want to go with it? But it's certainly innate in all of us. So thank you. Carla, you, when we touch base a little bit prior to the show of all the things that we can talk about, and we always run out of time because there's so much, near-death experiences or NDEs. I find these very interesting. I blogged on this years ago, and my intuition's a little off because the name of the book's escaping me, but it was a neurosurgeon who detailed his accounts of a near-death experience. Now, you really can't get more literal, one's analytical brain. You're talking about a neurosurgeon, and he profoundly went into such detail about his journey, and the book was amazing. So people talk about this. It's not widely accepted. It's not widely discussed, but you have something to share on the subject of NDE, near-death experiences. Why don't you share that with our listeners and viewers?
Well, I do know the book you're speaking of from that doctor.
Do you know the name?
And
the title?
It is actually it's much more widely accepted because it happens a lot. And you can rule some things out. People will say that the anesthesia process and things that people have in surgery. And, of course, that would be true because that's practical, and I understand that. But when people are having near-death experiences for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years, all over the world with different religious beliefs, different cultures, and yet the same themes are consistently showing up, we kind of have to look at that. And yeah, I do have to, not personally, but with my parents, well, actually I was involved with one of them, experiences. Now, my father, again, a Nobel Prize nominee scientist, so you have to know what his brain thought, okay? He was in surgery, and he was shown the entire surgery. He was taken out of his body. He saw what the bad news was going to be. He saw what the problem was. He was able to repeat to the doctors what they had said.
Wow.
And so when he was pulled out and they couldn't operate on him, it wasn't worth it, according to the doctors. When he came out of anesthesia, he said, I already know what you're going to tell me. And he was able to spew it all back. And they were stunned. And they all validated, because I spoke to them. I mean, I was young, but I still spoke to them. And he had been shown certain things of what the other side, quote unquote, was going to be like. And he was given a choice on whether he wanted to go or not. And there was further details that he would not share with me. He actually told me I had to learn in my own life.
Really?
So that is an abbreviated version of my father's. So he didn't die on the table and need paddles, but that was during surgery an experience. And when my mother passed, I had an experience which I didn't know, there was a name called shared near-death experience. I did not even know this existed. My mother was, close to passing away. And I'm a night owl. I never go to sleep early. It was 11 o'clock at night, and I'm there with her, like most people are, if they can be, if they're lucky enough to be with their loved one, up against my mother, and I fall completely asleep. Who does that? I had coffee next to me. My mother's dying, and I'm asleep. It was the oddest thing, and my husband watched me, and he thought, why on earth did she fall asleep? But in that time, I was taken with my mom to this field. I'm not even overly outdoorsy, so my brain's not going to do this, to this beautiful flat field that I could see no end to. And she moved in front of me and kept walking ahead of me and got younger and younger and younger. And I wondered, why are you not saying goodbye to me? And she didn't. She just kept walking. And she got, maybe, 20 or 30 feet in my earthly brain, and I woke up. And I said to my husband, who had been, very realistically counting her breaths, I said, has she passed? He said, no. And why did you fall asleep? What happened? I was like, wow. And, time had passed, and he couldn't understand it, but I was living what I think was in the fray of another dimension. And I've subsequently learned that is an actual thing called the shared near-death experience. So I got a little taste of that in those two experiences.
That's fascinating. So, Carla, how do we distinguish these experiences from a dream, or are they in fact similar? Are they in fact heightened dreams, deeper dreams? Where does the distinction lie? Perhaps that you were having a dream of your mother versus the shared near-death experiences, or again, can all of these experiences be couched under the larger auspices of dreams?
I don't think they all can be couched as dreams. I think some are absolutely dreams. There's no doubt about it. I think when we dream of loved ones, some of it is just our psychological brain dumping our anxiety, our excitement, our fears, everything. Usually the marker is when you remember it as clear as day for the next 20 or 30 years, and you feel as if it absolutely happened and you were there. There's usually not a large amount of emotion in it, so you're not traumatized. I wasn't screaming, Mom, don't leave, don't leave. I watched her leave, I watched her get younger, and I did logically say, wow, she's not saying goodbye to me. Wow. But I wasn't in tears, where in a dream or something like that, you would think I would be. That's usually the marker on, is there emotion, and are you content within it, and things like that. There's a difference.
By the way, it was bothering me and haunting me, but I remembered his name. And then Tim found the book. It was Dr. Eben Alexander. I actually I interviewed him on the show years ago. He called in.
Wow.
I did. It was phenomenal. And Tim, is that video up on our website? On the Cox and Graziano website, you can watch that under the blog section. I knew I had blogged on it as well, and for some reason the blogs are not showing up on the website, but it was Proof of Heaven was the book, and that is something I would encourage everyone to read. It was inspirational. It was a great book. Um, so I want to talk a bit about your book. You're the author. Is it 2 books now, Carla?
It's 2 books, but I only really have one that you can get, and it's an ebook now. The other one, I just have a few copies left. I kind of put that on the side, and I'm
Okay.
writing another
But Get
one.
Your Vibe Back, which I always love the title. I think it sounds like a great read, and I have read it. But tell us a little bit about Get Your Vibe Back. Who do you think would be, the holidays too are coming up this time of year? It's great to, get gifts for those we love or gifts for that you think people would enjoy. But who is a candidate really to read Get Your Vibe Back? Is it somebody who is starting to explore the process, who senses this intuition within themselves? They want to hone in on it. They want to grow it. Or somebody who's just in search of signs out there, who's in belief that energy lives on and love doesn't die, and there's still ways we can communicate with the other side. Who do you suggest really take a good read of Get Your Vibe Back?
The person who is interested in starting the journey on heightening their sixth sense and saying, I know that I have one, because you all know it. I mean, you know when the phone is going to ring or when you haven't thought about someone in years and then they call you. Some of it's a mere coincidence they'll give you, but when you start noticing that, okay, this is too many things, this is not a biased confirmation, things are really going on, that's the person, because I feel, and I'm a former school teacher, I do believe that you start with the basics. So to me, I wrote this book from all exercises I had studied since the 1990s and taught. So these were not things I just pulled out of left field. It is a quick book to get somebody vibing, get your vibe back. So then you can start building, as I call it, a pyramid up to the strength of whether it be mediumship or just a heck of a sixth sense. So that's really what it is. It's not about teaching people to connect to their spirit people. I do that, and I have videos all over for that. I privately teach people. I do that, but the foundation, to me, it's like it's elementary school, and that's where you need to start with practical things. I mean, you can just get vibing right away. You really can.
Carla, what do you say? There's so many people, I'm sure, who come to you and they want a message so badly. They want to hear something. Oftentimes they want to hear something specific. Like you said, they want the answer to that plaguing, nagging question. But you can only disseminate the information that you're getting. So you're not going to make it up. Again, there's there's an actuality to your work. But what do you say to the person who doesn't get the message that they were hoping to receive? How do you keep them open to the possibility of receiving a message in the future, or open to continuing to receive signs? How do you mitigate that disappointment?
Honestly, that is an art you have to learn in your practice, because I feel that because this is so widely out there now, that people think it really is a phone call. And yes, it can look like a phone call, and I'll admit that. I'll get a client on the phone or on Zoom, and boom, I'm like, who's Peter? And they're like, my dad, and then we just go. So it can, which makes things a tad misleading, because then it brings the human mind to the next step of, well, they told me that, now they can tell me this. And the expectation you really have to kind of keep control of. I tell people, I have a speech before I work with them, and I let them know to try to be open to what you hear, not necessarily what you want to hear.
Right.
But my job is to prove evidentially that I have your person, not what they'll tell you or who to marry or anything like that. And I'm very diplomatic about it, but that's a big part. And frankly, if it gets too difficult, I end a session. It only has to happen a handful of times a year, but I will end a session. Because you could, unfortunately, tell people amazing information that's just shocking evidence where I'm thrilled that it's come through. And then they might say something, but I just want to know that they love me. And I get that. Or I just want to know they're not mad at me. And then, you've proven who you've had, and because you didn't say simple words, which are general and anybody could say who's not even ethical, they're upset that you don't say that. So I really manage, I have to manage a lot of expectations, frankly, a lot.
But you also have to be true to your craft and your skill, which again, I think is a credit to you, that you're not going to come in with those vague generalities of, they love you or they're with you. And I speak firsthand. You've read me a few times, and I've recommended people to you that all come back with the same positive experience. This always happens. Our time draws so quickly to a close. Carla, though, there's
It's
so many
done.
ways to find you. Can you share your website and social media accounts?
Sure. It's carlablaha.com, and I have a big TikTok presence. It's Keep Vibing with Carla, and Facebook is Carla Blaha Evidential Medium, as well as Instagram.
And Blaha is Blaha.
Correct.
We really encourage following the show. Take a look, see it for yourself, folks. You do have to be open to believe. You have to be open to signs. But, I always say for my line of work and the amount of loss I see on a daily basis, you have to believe that, life doesn't end here. It would be a pretty depressing thought if so. So be open to the signs around you. Listen to your own voice inside yourself, because as Carla said and our caller Janine called in, it's our own intuition. It's inside of us. We just have to work on that skill. And I think it's a great way to go through life, being in tune and in touch with yourself and the world around you. Carla Blaha, thank you so much. We'll have you back again. carlablaha.com. And this is Jen Graziano thanking you for taking the time to listen as we took the time to talk. Have a great day, Westchester. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jen.